the rest of the story. Damon Stewart was relaxing in the big chair behind the big desk in the office of his Flint, Michigan dry goods store when a clerk cleared his throat in the doorway and said, "Sorry to disturb you, sir, but there's a lady here to see you." Stewart smiled and stood to greet his visitor. She was a tall woman wearing a dark print dress and a large hat with a proper veil. She introduced herself as Mrs. Linus Seeley. "Forgive me," said Stewart warmly, "but I do not believe I've had the pleasure." "Oh, but he had," Miss Seeley assured him. "He'd had the pleasure some 20 years ago," at which point the woman gently lifted her veil, revealing an attractive and all too familiar face. "You might be the mother or perhaps the elder sister of somebody I once knew," Stewart reflected. His expression of puzzlement was slowly evolving into anxiety. "No," Miss Seeley answered. "She was not a relative of that person. She was that person." For before there was Mrs. Linus Seeley, there was Sarah Edmonds, and Sarah had a past that was more than mysterious. It was sensational. 2 decades had flown since she and the now distinguished Mr. Damon Stewart had slept together. "Am I so changed?" Sarah smiled. Stewart slumped back in his chair, the wind knocked out of him. It took interminable moments for him to recover sufficiently to ask, "Why did you come back?" And more deftly stated, in more words than that essential one, she replied that the reason was money. Stewart nodded as though he had anticipated this explanation. The rest he could not have conjured in his cleverest dreams, for Sarah had returned to renew all of her old acquaintances, and to the astonished businessman she recited their names: Milton Benjamin, Bill McCreary, Jim Brown, Freddie Schneider, Sylvester Larned, Sumner Howard, Willie Morse, and on and on and on. Further, Sarah would like to meet Damon's wife. Perhaps the former might impose on the Stewart's hospitality while she was in town. After all, she would need a place to stay and to receive the aforementioned callers. And guess what? Damon Stewart rose from his chair. He took Sarah's hand and exclaimed that he and his wife would gladly welcome Sarah into their home. For once upon an extraordinary chapter in the annals of the American Civil War, a woman served in the 2nd Regiment of the Michigan Volunteer Infantry, and I mean served honorably, admirably, from 1861 to 1865, fought in numerous battles, including the Battle of Bull Run. But when the war was done, no pension. And so it was that as middle age, ill health, and financial distress caught up with her, friends urged that she seek out her old comrades to petition Congress in her behalf. And they did. And Sarah Edmonds did receive her pension. And one day a 21-gun burial among veterans of the Grand Army of the Republic. But not for any accomplishment as Sarah Edmonds. Instead, for her years of gallant service as Private Franklin Thompson, a soldier who fought alongside and even bunked with, who slept with fellow Union troops, all the while remaining successfully disguised as a man. And now you know